I've lost count of what day we're in the Donald Trump, Stormy Daniels, hush money trial, hush fraud, business fraud, all of these gymnastics that we're doing to get to some sort of crime that took place. But apparently the former National Enquirer publisher, David Pecker, which again is an unfortunate name, returned to the witness stand today. And it's just fascinating because, you know, I'm reading about, well, he said Donald Trump helped him with networking and helped him, you know, get connected to people. Donald Trump told him, congratulations, you bought a great magazine when he bought the National Enquirer. Donald Trump maybe asked him to help kill stories, negative stories about Trump before the 2016 election. And I'm reading all this and I'm like, why is he on the witness stand saying any of these things? None of this is a crime. None of this is a crime. They're not accusing him. Now, as much as the prosecution in their opening statements tried to call him, they actually called David Pecker a co-conspirator. He's not being charged with anything. So none of this rises to the level of a crime. This is like a friend saying, hey, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't publish negative stories about me to another friend, and him not doing that, which, by the way, happens literally every day in mainstream media with these people. And it's just, maybe there's a silver lining here because this legal analyst on MSNBC is not too confident in the prosecution's ability to even connect Donald Trump to a crime. This is MSNBC. Watch.
A big takeaway is that this is a crime about falsification of business records. And yet, what the government seems to have the most evidence of is of the underlying conspiracy. What's still unknown to me is how they're going to prove Donald Trump's own involvement in the falsification of the business records with which he's been charged. So we heard a lot of previews of the evidence of the construction of the conspiracy, who was involved in it, who will place Donald Trump with the knowledge and intent to commit election-related crimes. What I didn't hear as much about is how Donald Trump then directed the cover-up thereafter. For example, there is a 2017 Oval Office meeting between Donald Trump and Michael Cohen, where the prosecution says they cemented the repayment deal. How are they going to prove that? One, through the testimony of Michael Cohen, but I was looking yesterday to hear how else are they going to prove that? They say they have a photograph of the two gentlemen at that meeting. They also have invoices days afterwards, and then a couple of days after that, the first payment to Michael Cohen. But I was hoping to hear that they have a lot more than that. Somebody who was also at the meeting, who overheard the meeting, who placed some of these documents in front of Donald Trump, heard his comments about it. I didn't hear that yesterday. I'm hoping that we hear prosecutors
know you're hoping
have a lot
that.
more about the back end of the deal.
We're aware.
As much as they do about the front end of it.
Yeah, we know you're very much hoping to hear more about that. I mean, but these are the same class of people who took a dossier that they knew was not vetted about Donald Trump peeing on people and totally ran to air with it that rabid to get Donald Trump on something. And now you have people on MSNBC like, I hoped that there was more. I really hope there is, because I hate Trump. I want him thrown in prison for life, but I'm just not seeing it. Boy, yeah, that might be a problem.
It's incredible. It's the reach of all reaches.
Yeah.
This entire situation, right? Like you have one incident, the payment from Trump/Cohen to Stormy Daniels. David Pecker had absolutely nothing to do with that. Right. He had nothing to do with that. He, at one point, was considering looking at it, but then wound up saying, you pay for it. So it didn't come. He didn't have anything to do with that. These are other women, other situations. By the way, as they talked about in trying to prove Trump guilty of this, said that he had an existing relationship going back to his time at The Apprentice to kill stories, which again is not illegal and not a crime.
Right.
So
it happens all the time.
But a key part of it making it a crime was tying it to the election. And then they all said they actually had this relationship going from long before he was even running for president. It makes absolutely no sense. And then there's 34 charges against him. The 34 charges against him is incredible. The way they get to 34 is 11 checks written to Michael Cohen.
For the
same payment. So $130,000, and then he paid him back in monthly installments. 11 checks written to Michael Cohen, 11 invoices written by Cohen to get the money
for the same
payment, same checks, and 12 entries into the general ledger. Now, of course, if you know anything about Donald Trump, he's not there with his pen writing in the general ledger about his business practices. That's not his role in the enterprise. And beyond that, this is just one thing, right? This is turning one thing into 34 things. How can 11 of the counts be about Michael Cohen submitting an invoice? Like, if I get an invoice from someone, I can be convicted of a crime for it? The whole thing is completely ridiculous. And, to get over this hump, even if we had all this would just be a misdemeanor anyway. These would all be misdemeanors. They have to tie it to another larger crime, which they haven't even told anyone what it is. They keep saying election interference, which is not a specific thing, and certainly nothing he's been charged with. There's no other crime. The other people who would need to charge him with a crime have not done so. This is as bad as it gets. Sometimes Trump says, oh, they're coming after me and I've been wronged. And sometimes he stretches that. Sometimes he's kind of BSing. Sometimes he's done stuff that's wrong and he should be hit on. There's all sorts of real things occasionally with Donald Trump. This one is completely ridiculous. It is fair. If you want to look at your president and say, look, I'm voting for president, I don't like what he did here. Mm-hmm. And you can make that decision when you go to the ballot box. But to try to throw him in prison over this is a whole nother line. It makes absolutely no sense. It is the weakest of the cases, and that's saying something.
I agree with you, Stu, but I am going to say I still am uncomfortable with them saying, well, you get to choose at the ballot box, because now you have people going to the ballot box who are like, do I really want a president that has 91 indictments? Well, what if they're all BS? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So they're already poisoning the voter's mind by even accusing him of these things, because then they're like, oh, but we don't want a felon as president. Well, when they've completely weaponized the judicial system against someone, how can he not be a felon? Does that mean that he deserves that title? No. So they've already poisoned the well. And that's what's so frustrating to me.
I think that's the point right there.
Of course it is.
Look, with Trump, they start at one place and then they're working themselves backwards, okay? So it's like, I want to end up here. How we get there is not even damn important.
Right.
So we'll just make some stuff up if we got to, because you're explaining this. I have no idea what role Pecker even plays in that. I don't think any of us actually do, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
I think the point, and you hit on a great one, Sarah, is exactly what you brought up. As long as they can keep this charade up, because even when I hear other people that don't really talk politics, they bring this stuff up, indictments, and they sort of
he has 91 indictments.
Because their mind is already made up that this man is not fit to fill said position, and we don't like the guy because of that. Even if I can't express what the hell he did wrong, if anything at all. So perhaps this is even good enough, and maybe that is a little scary, because for a lot of the American people that do get out there and vote, it's good enough. So let's say it's even proven that a lot of this stuff is BS. Would it be too late for the American people, or for some of the American people who look at these indictments and say, well, this is not someone that I want to support?
I want to give a good example of that. Ken Paxton, Attorney General Ken Paxton here in the state of Texas, for like almost a decade of his life was under indictment for securities fraud charges. Okay. They used it every election. They said, he's under indictment, but he's under indictment. And there are so many people in this country, or in the state, I guess, that they were banking on that didn't understand what that term means, that they associate guilt with indictment, that they thought that they could poison the minds of enough Texas voters to dissuade them from voting for Ken Paxton. Well, let me tell you how that turned out. Almost 10 years later, it was all dismissed.
Yes,
there was a pretrial diversion, which who wouldn't want to sign that? The amount of money that you're going to spend on lawyers, where they completely threw away all of this evidence that they claimed they had mounting against him. Every time they wrote about it, they said he faces 99 years in prison for securities fraud charges. And then they just walked away from any prosecution. You know what that tells me? It was a weak freaking case from the beginning. That's it. And Ken Paxton, of course, has spent a decade having to go through this and says, yeah, I'll sign an agreement that I'm not admitting any guilt because I didn't do anything wrong. And let's just walk away from this. And he did. But that's not what a prosecution does who has a strong case. But they were able to use it against him for almost a decade of his life. And how did that turn out? With absolutely no guilt. That's it.
Because
that's what they do.
Man, that's what they bank on, and they're smart enough to do that.
Right.
And look, I wish that the American people would be able to analyze situations, especially legal ones, the way that you do.
Right.
But it's
just
all
don't.
being filtered, man.
I know.
It's all coming from the MSNBCs of the world.
Because when they write about it, they say he was indicted
They
and
use that
faces
terminology.
99 years in prison. They string it all together.
Exactly, and they filter it that way, and they use that sort of language because they know that the general public is going to associate that with something bad.
Right.
Even if it comes after the fact that it went away. I'll use an example. Obviously, this is a very, very small example. I'm not comparing myself and my situation to what Trump did. But if you guys remember, we had my company in Riververse had this issue with a church regarding ISOM. Now, that went away. Obviously, there wasn't anything there. Us both parties said we're walking away from this. No wrongdoing. We're going about our business. Some people already had their mind made up because they hear X and O got sued and therefore he did something wrong. And there's people still to this day that believe that, despite everybody admitting that nothing wrong happened here. So this is to a much larger degree, obviously, and you're dealing with not only just more counts, but this is the freaking former president of the United States. They know what they're doing because they don't anticipate that the American people will do a bit of research. They're just going to associate something like indictment with something bad, and they're going to disqualify you.
Unfortunately, that happens a lot.
Yeah, it does. And I think, I think conservative voters would be really dumb to just blow this off. I think it's a real threat. I mean, poll after poll after poll says there is a very small percentage, but a significant percentage of people who say, if he's a convicted felon, I won't vote for him.
Right.
I don't tend to believe those people. I don't know anybody like that, but it's just hard to believe that you're like, I'm going to vote for Trump. Oh no, these cases are too strong. Like, I don't know who that person is, but maybe they're telling the truth, right? And that should make you nervous. On the other hand, though, the Paxton example is maybe a little encouraging, right?
Yeah.
Paxton had that the entire time. You're right that it turned into nothing, but he also kept winning elections.
Yes.
He also kept winning even primaries in Texas.
Yes.
So that's
with millions of dollars against him.
Millions of dollars against him. And Trump obviously has more of a bully pulpit than Ken Paxton will ever have. So there is a chance there. And I think this first one's really going to be interesting. Everyone keeps saying the other three cases coming against him might not come before the actual election because they keep getting delayed and everything else. If he can somehow get a hung jury in this one case, it may very well feel to voters, wow, they came after him with all that stuff and got nothing.
Right.
And that might give you the reverse of that. Maybe people will say, wow, they really are coming after him. Maybe he'll get a boost of positive media out of that.
Hey, look, you're a glass half full kind of guy, too.
That's what I do on the show because it's not an angry show. It's a freaking nice, beautiful, happy show.
It's fun. We're laughing.
She's wearing pink. How can you be sad when you're wearing pink?
If you like this clip and you want to see the full episode, click here. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, come on, you know you do. Click here.